An Australian teenager has become the sixth foreign tourist to die of suspected methanol poisoning in Laos. All the deaths are believed to be connected to bootleg alcohol. Authorities in Laos have released few details so far, but say an investigation is ongoing.
Backpacking in Southeast Asia is the trip of a lifetime for many young Westerners who want to see the world. But for 19-year-old Australians Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones, it was a trip that cut their lifetimes far too short. They were among a spate of tourists in the Lao town of Vang Vieng who fell sick from suspected poisoning by alcoholic drinks laced with methanol. The two young women were evacuated to a Bangkok hospital for emergency treatment, but they could not be saved. The news of their deaths made headlines back home.
Our first thoughts in this moment are with her family and friends who are grieving a terrible and cruel loss. This is every parent's very worst fear and a nightmare that no one should have to endure. All Australians offer them our deepest sympathy in this time of heartbreak.
Thai police said the likely cause was bootleg alcohol, the source of which is still unclear.
The likely cause of death is the consumption of methanol from fake liquor. It's poison and cannot be consumed. It causes swelling of the brain and death.
Methanol is used in industrial and household applications like antifreeze, paint thinner and varnish. But it is sometimes added to drinks at disreputable bars as a cheap alternative to liquor, sometimes with fatal results. The town of Vang Vieng in Laos, where the tourists fell ill, is a popular stop-off point on the Southeast Asia backpacker trail. After Laos opened to tourism in the late 1990s, Vang Vieng quickly gained a reputation for wild parties, drunken river tubing, and narcotic debauchery. And while the town has since tried to shed this image and rebranded itself as an eco-tourist hub, this spate of tourist deaths has put Vang Vieng's party culture back into the public eye.
I'd like to welcome Catherine Atkinson, CEO of the UK-based Safer Tourism Foundation, for more on this. Let me start with a two-part question. Why is methanol mixed with alcohol in the first place? And how big a problem is methanol poisoning in Laos?
So methanol is mixed with other forms of alcohol, usually in poorer countries. So it's often countries where there's very little regulation of the food and drinks industry, and also perhaps where home brewing, homemaking of alcohol is more common than in other countries. So that's typically where it happens. It's really hard to know the true scale of it in Laos. I mean, the Médecins Sans Frontières believes that every year many hundreds of people, residents, not tourists, die from methanol poisoning. But obviously they don't make the news. It's only really when, very sadly, tourists are affected that suddenly we become aware of this.
How does your organization help tourists, particularly those young travelers who might be more at risk?
Well, we work in two ways. We try and encourage the travel industry to make sure they've got the best possible health and safety systems to keep travellers safe. But we also try and talk directly to travellers to try and help them understand the risks that they're going to face when they travel and then to manage those. We want people to travel. Travel is an amazing thing to do, but we want people to come back safely.
Just very quickly, how do you reach them?
Entirely depends on the issue that we're talking about. So on this occasion, we look specifically to those kind of channels that young backpackers are going to be using, and they're mostly social media. So we'll be targeting them through Instagram, through TikTok, through all of the channels that young backpackers use, because this kind of travel, really, it's through word of mouth. People learn about the places to go, the cool places to stay, and the great activities to do. So that's the way we try and talk to people directly.
As far as you know, what's the Laotian government doing to tackle this problem?
I don't have any information at the moment, and I think it's pretty early on in the investigation. They're still trying to figure out where this methanol poisoning originated. What's the supplier chain here? I think it'll be, if Laos wants to keep tourists coming and backpacker tourists coming, they're going to have to take a pretty serious look at how that the provision of alcohol is regulated in the country much more widely. So I think it's a really big issue for them. Tourism is an important business for Laos. It's a fairly poor country, and they're going to have to really address this at a systemic level.
Our thanks to Catherine Atkinson, CEO, Safer Tourism Foundation. Again, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I spoke earlier to Andrea Sella, who is a professor of chemistry at University College London. I asked him if people would notice if they had drunk methanol.
Look, I mean, the real problem with methanol is that it is quite insidious. I mean, if you actually smell methanol, it smells very similar to ordinary alcohol, ethanol. And so really there is no kind of obvious way. You know, sometimes people imagine that poisonous things are somehow different fundamentally in terms of taste or look from non-poisonous ones, and that's just not true. So especially, of course, if you've had a few drinks, you're even less likely to be able to detect it. And I would say that chemists would really struggle just by having a sniff to distinguish between the two.
But if methanol looks, smells, and even tastes like alcohol, why is it so lethal?
Well, you know, biochemistry is what it is. The interesting thing is that the shape of the methanol molecule is very similar to that of ethanol, that is ordinary alcohol. And therefore, when it is ingested, it will actually affect and go through similar metabolic pathways. And so on the one hand, methanol is known to be, like ordinary alcohol, a bit of a nervous system depressant. It causes mild inebriation initially. But the problem is that the body's detoxifying mechanism, which is in the liver, you know, it works on the liver, the enzymes in the liver work on it, but what they do is they turn it into something which is absolutely lethal. So first, formaldehyde, which is poisonous, but particularly formic acid. And formic acid is a really big problem because what it does is it knocks out one of the key enzymes in the respiratory process, which is used by every single cell in the body. And as a result, you know, you're going to cause pretty systemic damage.
All right, so you don't want to drink that. Just very, very briefly, Professor Sella, is there an antidote?
Well, I mean, you know, it is possible if you are, you know, if medical attention gets to you quickly, it is possible to save people, provided they haven't drunk too much and provided it's happened very quickly. Typically, what this involves as a first step is actually giving people more of real alcohol, essentially to swamp the enzyme to make sure that there is enough time for the poisonous version, methanol, to be eliminated in the kidneys.
Professor Sella, thank you so very much for your time.